Good morning. All right, I have to give you guys some context to why I decided to fill the halls of Stellenbosch with some gangster rap. Nipsey Hussle, the author of that song, a good friend of mine, passed away earlier this year, unfortunately, but was actually an ECD ambassador. A lot of people don't know that, but as an LA-based rapper, was committed to integrating STEM and ECD in low-income communities all over the world, particularly in South Central Los Angeles, his home of Eritrea and Ethiopia. So, gangster rap impacts the world. All right. So, it's an absolute pleasure to be here today. I'm super excited. It's great to have the privilege of being around so many change makers, and I thank the organizers for inviting me and giving me the privilege to be here today. So often as a speaker and entrepreneur, I talk a lot about tech, entrepreneurship, and innovation because I think those three things, the convergence they have, particularly on the African continent, are how we're going to reach that next level of growth together. And that's what I want to talk about today with my title, Technology and the Future. So as I kick off, I've just got one question for you. These are all the buzzwords kind of associated with technology. You've got big data, robotics, innovation, virtual reality, exponential growth, 4IR. If you're in South Africa, you know that's a huge word right now. AI, the Internet of Things, blockchain. How many of you know what the hell any of these things mean? Anybody? All right, some of them. How many of you can get on stage right now and tell me what they all mean and how they impact your business or your organization on a daily basis? So I'm going to put my hand down, right? Because even though I'm in tech, and I've been so as long as I can remember, and my company has built some of the most great solutions in South Africa and banking and finance over the last couple of years, I really don't always grasp what these things mean. Because there's a lot of intimidation when it relates to technology, right? It's quite overwhelming. It's quite difficult to understand how we can integrate these things into our lives and use them as tools. So today what I want to do is have a conversation about how we can simplify technology in our life, because I think that's how we learn to use it for scale and for impact. So, how do we do so? I believe it's the title of my book, but we do it by being adjacent. And I love the definitions of adjacent. It says not distant, nearby, having a common endpoint, adjoining, flanking, juxtaposed, neighboring, verging, linked. When I want you to think about technology, I don't want you to try to keep up with technology. It's impossible, all right? As we're here these 3 days, there's things happening that when we leave here tomorrow or Thursday would have replaced some of the things that we were even discussing. Even writing a book about technology was incredibly difficult because every week I had to delete an entire chapter because something was announced that made my content irrelevant. Because technology is continuously changing and shifting, it's impossible to keep up with its pace. So I don't want you to try to do that. I don't want you to consume every article or every buzzword or every tidbit about technology. I want you to be next to technology. I want you to have a common endpoint with technology as a tool in your life. So if we think about technology, there's certain characteristics that it has. And that's what I want to go through right now. And the first thing to understand is, by definition, technology is just merely human knowledge that involves tools, materials, and systems. All technology is in your life is the advancement and pursuit of making things a little bit better, a little bit more efficient. That's all it is. You don't have to think about high tech. You don't have to think about applications. You just need to see at the very bottom that technology in our role in life is just making things simpler, better, and different. That's it. That's all I want you to remember about the definition of technology. It's always existed from the beginning and dawn of man and women to where we are today. It's how we've evolved as a species of humans on this planet and how we will continue to evolve. The other thing is that technology is hereditary. Now, what do I mean by that? If you think about the phone in your pocket or your purse or even the technology that goes into this screen, it all had a predecessor. It all came from a previous version. A lot of times when we think about technology, we think that it's going to be something that dropped out of space, right, from Mars, that Elon Musk brought down for us, and we've never heard of it before. It's incredibly intimidating. It's scary. And that's not true. Technology always has a previous version. So if you think about how technology works, you need to understand that all technology derived from a previous version, and all future technology will derive from where we are today. So if you want to predict the future and think about technology in the future, just know that it's going to be a future version of whatever you're interacting with today. It's not going to be something that you've never heard of or never conceived before. It's just going to be the continual evolvement of easier, better, and different. The other thing is technology is exponential. And maybe some of you have heard this example before, but as human beings, we think in a linear manner. We predict where we're going based on where we've been, right? Especially if you're a teacher or a scientist, this is kind of, you particularly have linear minds, right? And if I told you, let's say, to walk 30 steps and ask you, how far would you be when you were on the 30th step? Well, you would say, well, every step that I take is about a meter. So on 30 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 30, I'd be 30 meters away, right? I'd look back and say, I came 30 meters. That's typically how we operate. When we think about our households and you think about groceries, you're like, well, how much does my family eat in one day? Multiply that by 30, that's about how many groceries I need. It's very easy for planning purposes. But technology in the world today doesn't move linearly. It moves exponentially. And by that I mean it doubles at every turn. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so forth. So if I took the same example and told you to walk 30 exponential steps, where would you be on the 30th step? Hey? Tokyo. A little bit further. Anybody else? A number? 60? That's about step number 4. 30 steps. Where would we be? Mars. All right. You'd be 1,073,716,824 meters. All right? It's 26 times around the world. Just by shifting your thinking to be exponential. And so technology at its core works that way. So it's Moore's law of exponential growth, and every 18 or 16 to 24 months, technology doubles in capacity, right? So the phone in your pocket doubles in capacity, doubles in speed, in processing power, right? In features. It also halves in cost. Maybe not at your cell phone provider or Vodacom, but definitely in the cost to make it, right? That's how technology moves, and so that continues to happen. So that's why every 2 years your phone kind of stops working. I mean, it's also intentional by Apple and some of the other providers, but that's how technology works, right? And the other thing is technology is not code-based. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that you all need to learn how to code, all right? It's not necessarily valuable. Somebody asked me last night, even though I lead a digital lab of 18 people, what do I do? Do I know how to code? Am I a developer? And I am not. All right? I'm horrible at coding. You don't want me to be the one that codes anything that you do. But understanding it is important. But having the ability to is not a necessity. Because technology, again, doesn't always have to be code-based. It doesn't have to be all the bells and whistles of a complex application. And I'm so glad that you shared examples of kind of exponential technology that, in its core, very basic. It's just a simple form on a cell phone, probably on USSD as well, that can be captured that lead to high-impact health outcomes. Right? And it wasn't a complex thing. I'm sure you guys didn't spend very much building the actual core technology. And so that's one thing I want you to realize is that you don't have to create the most amazing app of the future just to grow in technology. So the other thing I was thinking about as I was preparing to be here was innovation, because this entire conference is put together by Innovation Edge. And I'm sure some of you were sent, and I will acknowledge some of you were sent to be here from your companies or your organizations. They said, you go learn about innovation and then come back and tell us, right? But what does innovation actually mean? And I think innovation is the process by which we change the world. Right? And it sounds very airy-fairy and quite magnificent, but it's taking an idea and translating into that in something that creates value. Now, when we innovate, we don't innovate just for the sake of innovating, of smashing the status quo and breaking the previous version. We innovate to create real, sustainable value. And that's one thing I want you to realize. It's the implementation of technology, right? That's all innovation is. It's the implementation of easier, better, and different. So what isn't innovation? Innovation is not just a buzzword. A few years ago, we had a banking client here in South Africa that told us that they wanted to be the most innovative bank in South Africa. And we were really excited because that's an amazing brief to get from a client. And we thought, okay, there's so many things that we can use, so many amazing technologies. And we started throwing buzzwords at them and saying, this is what we're going to be able to do. And we're thinking about free banking and mobile banking. We're thinking about all these things. And then we learned 6 months later that all they wanted was a new website. All right? And that's typically how innovation works. Everybody wants to be innovative, but not everybody actually wants to be innovative. And again, innovation is not just technology. And thirdly, is innovation is not replication. And I love, I think it was Nicola that spoke yesterday about unicorns. And she said that, when we think about unicorns, we have to think about them in context. A lot of times when we think about technology and innovation, we go straight to Silicon Valley. We go to Silicon Valley, we go to Tel Aviv, and we think, whatever that is, we just got to bring it here, right? The African version of Airbnb, of Facebook, of Uber, right? The Uber of, I've heard that countless times, right? And that's not innovating. Innovation has to be contextual problem solving. You can't just copy and paste whatever exists in other societies. Innovation is also not being the first to market, right? You don't have to actually be first. Apple Computer is notorious for not being the first to actually launch any of their technologies that exist in their devices, right? But they happen to package it quite well and tell an amazing brand and marketing story that's got them a $1 trillion valuation. But they're never really first in doing anything that they do. Also, innovation is not outsourced, right? I've been in a lot of companies that have a little innovation department, and it's usually in the basement with a whiteboard and some sticky notes, all right? Maybe some of you represent people on the innovative team, right? And it's at different demographics, different age groups, and then they throw you down there and they say, come up with amazing things. Innovation doesn't work that way. In any organization, any company, any business, innovation has to be bottom up and top down. Everybody has to be involved. And then lastly, is innovation is not fail-proof. If you expect your organization to be innovative without failure, you're absolutely wrong. One of the greatest minds in the world, Da Vinci, I was going to say Michelangelo, close second, but Da Vinci was a polymath, right? He was the jack, literally, of all trades and the master of all, right? He was a scientist, he was a botanist, he was a painter, a sculptor, a mathematician, an architect. He literally did everything. And his key to amazing success and scientific discovery was one word. And I want you to all put your hands up like this. Everyone, please. Dimostrazione. Come on now. No, you got it. No, not with your hands like this. We're Italian. Like this. Dimostrazione. Yeah, what do you think that means? All right? Demonstration. Dimostrazione. All right? Demonstration. So he believed that incredible success was the process to do so was rapid experimentation and failure. All right? So the greatest mind, arguably, in society ever said that the only way he did that was rapidly experimenting, rapidly failing. So if you want to be innovative, you need to understand that failure is going to be part of your life. You can't separate those two things. So how do we approach innovation? I've got 3 S's for you very quickly. The first thing I want you to do is solve a problem. Innovation is not innovation if you're not solving for anything. Right? A lot of people just want to innovate, so it's a buzzword. They want to just do something new. They want to do something people have never heard of before. But that's not innovation. You need to have a contextual solve of a problem. So when you're thinking about your organizations or your communities, what are the problems that they're facing? What are those things that your employees, your staff, the community, what are they dealing with? And then aim for lasting impact versus the bottom line. And it's great that I'm speaking to a group of educators and people that have a soft spot for the growth and development of other people, but still think about lasting, sustainable impact, something that can really last a long time. The next thing I want you to do is simplify the situation. Innovation does not have to be a complex application. And again, I'm so glad that you spoke about such a simple tool that had amazing reach. The founder of WhatsApp, right, Sergey, when he created WhatsApp, all he wanted was a simpler way to call his father in Ukraine, right? because back then he was using calling cards. And I'm sure a lot of you have used those before, especially when you travel. We'll date ourselves, but you used to have to go and buy a calling card, load it with credit, call an 800 number or whatever country that you're in, and then dial somebody else, and then deal with the problems of, that rapidly decreasing airtime. And he's like, I'm tired of doing that, so I want to be able to speak to my Father in 3 clicks. And that's all WhatsApp was. It wasn't staged to be the biggest communication tool in the entire world. He's like, I just want to simplify how much time it takes for me to speak to my Father on the other side of the world. That's all innovation is. So when I want you to think about how you can innovate in your businesses and in your organizations, just look around and say, how can we make this incrementally different? How can we make this process a little bit simpler, a little bit faster, a little bit cheaper? And then you're heading down the path of innovating. And I love these 6 words. I never thought about that before. If you can achieve that, you're well on your way. Lastly is scale. And we already spoke about what exponential scale looks like. So I want you to think about how you can, in a fast, cheap, and easy manner, reach the most amount of people. And that's what technology allows us to do. That's what mobile technology allows us to do. Because we're all here with smart or feature phones, right? We can all scale and reach out to millions of people in our networks. Here, even with 250, 260 people. That power through technology is incredible. And again, I want you to think about dimostrazione. So I love this quote by Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. It's a little violent, a little vulgar, but this is my favorite quotation about disruption, because this is exactly what disruption is. Now, I used to box a few kgs ago before I got married, all right? And I won't blame my wife, it was just me. But I learned how to box. So I would get up and I'd go to training. And when you first box, they run you around the block and you try to big up your cardio and build some lean muscle mass, right? And then after a couple weeks, they get you in front of the heavy bag and the speed bag, and you're starting to learn some combinations and you're feeling good about yourself. And then they get you in the ring and you're thinking about footwork and positioning, and then you're really feeling good about yourself, right? You're feeling like Floyd Mayweather, you feel like you can do this thing, all right? And then they're like, let's spar. And I don't know if you know how long 3 minutes is, but 3 minutes is a really long time to run away from somebody in a small box, especially when they're hitting you. And everything your trainer has taught you over the last previous months goes completely out the door. Move your head, lift up your arms, move your feet. I can't hear any of you, stop hitting me. But that's exactly what disruption is, all right? You're going to go away from here today or tomorrow and feel really good about a plan. You've got these notebooks that are amazing and capturing all these big ideas. And you'll go to other conferences and you'll feel so good. And then you'll try to test some of these things. And you'll think about dimostrazione and you'll go and you'll feel really good. And then the market will respond. Or some kid in a garage somewhere will completely knock away all your ideas and your investments and Bill and Melinda's money, and you'll feel horrible. And that's disruption, right? It'll knock you on your butt when you least expect it. The reality is that it happens to everybody. No one is immune from disruption. Though I did hear a speaker recently said the only people that are immune from disruption are the people that get paid to speak about disruption. So unfortunately for all of you, I'm safe, but you're in trouble. So how do we know that disruption's coming? There's a couple key words that I hear regularly, and I know, and I look at those people, and I'm like, you're in trouble. The first one is, our business model has been strong for the last 5, 10, 20 years, right? We've done this. We've made a lot of money. We're successful. And I've spoken to listed companies, JSE listed companies, and they always say this, no, man, we've been in business a long time. We're doing well, all right? Or we're just old school. We don't think about things like that. If you still call Facebook the Facebook, all right? That's you. Someone's laughing very hard. Shame. Or we don't understand digital, all right? It doesn't really make sense to us. We don't need to use it, right? That's for young people. Or we don't like millennials. I hear that quite often. They don't like you either, right? But it's important for us to figure out a way to work together. And lastly, and most importantly, and this is a fireable offense for me, if I'm working with you as a business or a company and I hear this, I get up from the table. What we've always done is, all right? If you're so rooted in the past, or even 6 months ago, you're not going to be sustainable in the future, or even in the present, all right? So if you're always rooted in what we did to get here, what we built, and the business model and so forth, all right? What we've always done, you will be disrupted and quite quickly. So Mike Tyson is coming for you. I love this quote by Ray Kurzweil. He says, every industry that we know of, like I mentioned, is subject to disruption in the next 20 years. Every industry, everybody. So understanding disruption and the base cause of it, exponential technologies that double in capacity, is not optional, it's critical. So if you do not want your industry to be disrupted or your business to be disrupted, rather it's going to be, but if you do not want to be left behind, you need to understand technology. It's not option. You have to do it. It's critical to survival. So how do we know things are ripe for disruption? Firstly, if we don't collect data and we don't use data to make decisions. Old technology, if your school or if your environment is using technology that's more than 2 years old, it is old technology. Unchanged business models. If you haven't changed how you operate in the last decade, you will be disrupted. If your business or your organization does not save people time, it will be disrupted. And if you have redundant intermediaries, if you've got pointless middlemen, you will be disrupted. So what's one big industry that we're all gathered here to talk about today that's going to be disrupted? Education, right? If you really think about the core of education, a lot of times when we think about education, we don't use any data in terms of the decisions we make. Sometimes there's scientists, and I'm so glad that there's science and there's studies, and we're talking about the impact of education and social conditions, but a lot of times we don't use any data. I know that you all use old technology, all right? That's the fact. We don't even have to argue about that. The business model of education has not changed since Greek times, right? We still operate the exact same way. A lot of times we don't save time, and unfortunately, teachers sometimes become redundant intermediaries, right? Teachers are not always the most capable resource in the room. There's a couple universities that I know of in the U.S. that are getting rid of teachers and using teachers as data. What did you call your title? I'm sorry. As an MC, you said? Adventure guide, right? Teachers are adventure guides, right? They're like, what question do you want to solve? All right? Here's where you can find that information, right? Not necessarily, telling you where exactly to go or telling you from their own experience. So as I wrap up, and I really just want to go to my last slide here because I took a little bit of time talking too much, sharing some jokes, is I want you to also, lastly, when you think about technology, is to shift your perception about what technology expertise look like. The movie Black Panther came out last year. It was an amazing movie, and I loved it because it shifted how we think about African excellence, right? We had people that looked like us, not necessarily sounded like us, they tried, but they looked like us, right? Last joke. Wakanda forever. And this is my last 2 slides and I'm done. A good friend of mine last year I launched a business called BrainToNet, and he connected the human brain to the internet at Wits University, all right? Because that has tremendous power, Adam Pantanovitz, that when you think about this technology, you usually think about Silicon Valley, you think about the rest of the world. But they use that technology in crafting prosthetic limbs. And the same research unit at Wits created prosthetic limbs that are 3D printed. So they took the price of prosthetic limbs from 250,000 Rand and above down to 2,500 Rand, right? A good friend in Kenya, our good friend, had a problem with his niece that was deaf, and he couldn't learn sign language as much as he tried. He couldn't learn it. So he developed a smart glove that automatically translates sign language into audible, right? It's amazing power. There's a young woman used to be based in Nigeria. She's now in Silicon Valley. A couple of years ago, she had the socket play ball, which is a soccer ball that kids would kick around all day. It would store kinetic energy. You'd plug it in the evening, and your house would have lights. She's used that exact same technology to create speed bumps and highway devices to store kinetic energy in our cities that changes how we do things. These young men, Batibu in Uganda, malaria was the #1 killer in Uganda, right? They created a device that doesn't take any blood drops, right? That uses lasers and magnets to detect malaria in your blood. They've had over 2,000 tests, and they have a 90% efficacy rate in predicting malaria, right? This young man hacked WhatsApp to make free voice calls and free data calls using no data. This young man, Idris Sandu, Uber, Snapchat, and Spotify, and as well as Instagram, used his systems in terms of algorithms and automated vehicle transfer, and he's only 22 years and from Ghana. All right? So I say all this to say that there's a brand locally that says, Africa, your time is now, and it's spot on, is that Africa is on the forefront of technology. We're doing it right now. We don't have to look to the other places in the world. We've got amazing Wakanda-like technology that exists here today. And I'm so glad to be here with all of you, and thanks for your time. Sorry for running a little bit over. Thank you.